So I wanted to try and do something just a tad different during this Shabbat. Instead of our sermon slot, we're just going to do a little bit of a conversation, a little bit of a text study. We've done this a couple times before, been often around holidays, so we figured I would do one around the holiday that's coming up, which is Sukkot. And who can tell me something about Sukkot? Who knows something about Sukkot? What can you tell me about Sukkot? Reach back into your mind and tell me something that you know about Sukkot. Don't be bashful. So, you built a sukkah, right? A booth, and we're going to talk a lot about that. Yeah, what do you know about Sukkot? Can you tell me one more time? No. So we learned a little bit about what makes a sukkah. And one of the things that makes a sukkah is the sukkah has to have 3 walls because you want to let people in, right? So the sukkahs have to be open. There can't be 4 walls to a sukkah. Yeah. You shake the lulav. So there are 4 species that we have on Sukkot. For those of you who have never celebrated Sukkot before, who aren't Jewish, we'll catch you up. But there are 4 special species that you shake on Sukkot, and sometimes we just call it the lulav, or the lulav and the etrog. The lulav is the palm, so totally. Yeah, what else do we know about Sukkot? Yeah. Beautiful. So on the sukkah, the top of the sukkah isn't supposed to be entirely covered because you're supposed to be able to see the night sky. I've noticed that our kids have done way better than adults in terms of Sukkot knowledge, but we're going to dive into it a little bit more. So we have a little bit of a text study sheet that's going around. Rabbi Heat's going to pass it around. I think we're going to have to share maybe 1 to every 2 people. If you're sharing with someone you don't know, that's even better than if you share with someone that you do know. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the ins and outs of the sukkah specifically. Not the holiday Sukkot, but the sukkah specifically. So just as a reminder, on the 15th of the month of Tishrei, which is the Hebrew month that we're in now, when the moon is full, if you've been looking out your window at night, you've noticed a full moon. It's heading towards full. On Sunday night, it will be entirely full. And just 5 days after Yom Kippur ends, we usher in this holiday of Sukkot. Don't read ahead. Just grab one. No peeking. Come on, team. And Sukkot is also called, it's one of the 3 major harvest holidays. It's also called the Festival of Booths, or a festival of Thanksgiving. And as we heard from so many of our amazing youngsters, we live and we eat and we sleep in something called a sukkah. Raise your hand if you have built a sukkah before. Pretty cool. Raise your hand if you've built a sukkah this year. Oh yeah. Raise your hand if you're going to build a sukkah this year. Well, if you would like an opportunity to build a sukkah, Sunday morning at 9 o'clock, we're going to be building a sukkah at Beth Am. The sukkah at Beth Am will be open all week, so we encourage you to come. So where we see the sukkah, somebody with the handout, where it says on the side that says the sukkah, will somebody read for us about the origins of the sukkah from the Torah? Don't be bashful. Yeah, Nancy. Go ahead.
You shall live in booths 7 days. All citizens in Israel shall live in booths, in order that future generations may know that I made the Israelites live in booths when I brought them out of Egypt. I am Adonai, your God.
Okay, so this is our biblical origins of why we live in these booths. And what do we notice about it? Any comments? What do you notice about this? Why do we do this? It's right there in front of us. Why do we do this? Because God said so, but that's not the only reason we do it. Why do we do this? To remind us of what? To remind us of the wandering in the desert. But is it to remind just us about the wandering in the desert? Our children and our children's children. So even within the Torah, we get the sense that this is a symbolic, but it's also a literal hut that we use to remind us about why we dwelled in there. So this is sort of, and if we see on the very top, in the very front, it says, all citizens in Israel, or so all citizens of Israel shall live in booths. So every one of us is commanded to live in a booth over Sukkot. And this is about what the Torah tells us. So now we have thousands and thousands of years of interpretations of what does that mean? What does a sukkah look like? What can we use to do a sukkah? And that's where it gets really fun. And we're going to dive into a little bit of that. So we need one more reader. Why do we dwell in the sukkah? We found the law that tells us to dwell with a little bit of the why, the future generations, but why do we dwell in the sukkah? Anybody else want to read for us? Yeah, go for it. Rabbi Heath has a microphone.
Do not say in your hearts, my own power and that might of my own hand have won the wealth for me. Remember that it is God who gives you the power to get wealth. Therefore, the people leave houses filled with good and harvest seasons, and they dwell in Sukkot, a reminder that they had not properly in the desert or homes inhabit. This is why our good God designated Sukkot and the harvest season, so that a person's heart should not grow haughtily because of houses filled with every good. Let's say our hands are made of all this wealth for us.
Beautiful. Great reading. Thank you. So we even have a little bit more. This is from the Rashbam. This is one of the descendants of Rashi. This is the 12th century. And what do we learn here? What else do we have from this statement that is sort of pushing us a little bit of why we should dwell in the sukkah? It's more than just future generations. What do we have for a reason why we should dwell in the sukkah? Shout it out. Humility, right? So to recognize as we have attained wealth, this is our opportunity to recognize that the wealth is, it's God that is one to be able to provide it. And what else? What are the other reasons? What are the other reasons? Yeah, so this is sort of it's an opportunity for us to actually, instead of just saying how wonderful our fortune is to really go and live out our fortune. And to live in a fragile structure like a sukkah, some more fragile than others, but to live in a fragile structure is a true reminder. It's sort of, you're open to the elements. You see the night sky. You feel what it is, despite where we might have in our big, beautiful homes, we have the recognition that there is a real fragility in shelter. So even as far back as the 12th century, the sukkah was a symbol of this fragility. Let's keep going. When do we build the sukkah? Yeah, we want to read for us, Rabbi Heath? Thank you for the microphone.
Thank you.
It is meritorious
Tough
to start
word.
building the sukkah immediately after Yom Kippur, even if it is Friday, because a chance to perform a percept should not be put off. One should choose it for a clean site. Choose for it a clean site. Everyone should build the sukkah, even if one is an eminent person.
Perfect. So what do we learn from this about when do we build the sukkah? When do we build the sukkah? Right away, right after Yom Kippur. And there are some people that their tradition is you're not even supposed to eat anything. If you've been fasting on Yom Kippur, you're supposed to drive the first nail into the sukkah before you even have a bite to eat, because you don't want to let a mitzvah lie. You really want to seize the opportunity. When I built my sukkah, I did not do this, I promise. But there's some people that do it and go right out. And what else do we learn from this? What else do we learn? Let's think about this last line. What's that? Nobody is too good to build the sukkah. Nobody is too good to dwell in the sukkah. the most eminent person is still required, right? And so on some level, the sukkah is the great equalizer. All of us, the most eminent and the least eminent, are to live in a sukkah. And we all are exposed to the same weather, and we all have our meals there, and we all feel the fragility. So it doesn't even matter where your status is. And so it says that not only should we rush to build it, but it potentially can be a very humbling experience as well. So let's do a couple more. All right, let's turn the page. What can you use for a sukkah? Can you use an animal for a sukkah? Can you use an animal for a wall of sukkah? Don't look. Who thinks you can use an animal for a wall of a sukkah? You've used an animal for a wall of a sukkah?
No, I've seen a PD library book where they do.
Oh, okay. So, Jessica, will you read this one for us about the elephant as a wall of a sukkah? This is from the Talmud.
If you used an animal as a wall of a sukkah, Rabbi Meir declares it invalid and Rabbi Judah valid, for Rabbi Meir was wont to say, whatever contains the breath of life can be made neither a wall for the sukkah. What is the reason of Rabbi Meir? Abe replied, lest it die. Oh dear. Rabbi Zir replied, lest it escape. Concerning an elephant securely bound, all agree that the sukkah is valid, since even though it died, there is still 10 handbreadth height in its carcass.
All right. So what do we learn from this? Can you use an elephant as the wall of a sukkah? Yes, if it's tied down, right? If your elephant is tied down, you can use the elephant as a wall of a sukkah. Noah, did you know that? Did your family use an elephant for a wall of their sukkah? No. All right, so what we learn here is that the rabbis had a field day figuring out what was the requirements for the sukkah. And there's lots of requirements. There's the different requirements on how high it can be or whether it can be under a tree. And there's modern requirements. Can you build a sukkah next to a tall building that might obstruct the stars to be able to see? Or can you build a sukkah on a boat? You can. But also, here it is, you can use the elephant of the wall of the sukkah. And I just love this because I just see it. This must have been a class, and some rambunctious 8th grader would have just asked, hey, Rabbi, can you use the elephant as a wall of a sukkah? And then they actually took him seriously. So it means there are no bad questions. So there you know. Next time if you're on Jeopardy, you can again ask the question. All right, the sukkah is temporary. Would somebody, Helene.
The sukkah is temporary. This Sukkot, let's remember that it's important to get cozy in the wilderness. Rabbi, are you going to comment on that? Reliving the wandering honors extended processes of transformation and reminds us that liberation struggles don't end when you cross the sea. We explore the nature of the obviously temporary to remind us that, in fact, everything is temporary, which means that everything can be different.
So this is by Rabbi Alana Alpert, who's a rabbi in Michigan. I should have put her name in the print, but I wrote it out there. And so what's Rabbi Alpert saying here? Sort of this recognition of the temporary nature of the sukkah. So you can't keep your sukkah up year-round. That's not allowed. You have to reconstruct a sukkah. And so what is she saying? Is she saying that there's this idea of the real temporary components of what life is within our sukkah. And I love this idea. We explore the nature of the obviously temporary to remind us that in fact that everything is temporary. If a sukkah can be a symbol for nothing else, it's something that we put up, and maybe we put up with our families, and maybe it's stored in our garages, or maybe it's, we figure out a way to make it, or maybe we come to Beth Am or to other sukkahs, and we know that it's only going to be up for a week. It's only going to be up for a week. And this is our opportunity to recognize the temporary nature and that everything has the ability to be different in different times. So any comments or thoughts on that? Yeah.
It feels a little darker to me, like we're all going to be refugees.
It feels a little darker here. There's a comment here about there's a darkness to this is that that there's a temporary nature of who we are and that maybe we'll always be refugees, right? And so one of the great commandment of Sukkot is to welcoming people into the sukkah and potentially welcoming people that are strangers. There's a lot of sort of Jewish social justice organizations, the American Jewish World Service, the Religious Action Center, that encourages us with our sukkahs, whether at synagogues or at our homes, to open those to potentially those who are vulnerable, and to recognize that this is a holiday not just for harvest and not just for celebration. It's definitely a holiday of joy, but to recognize that there is vulnerability. So I think it's an important theme of Sukkot. But more, you remember who was it that said Sukkot is a holiday of humility? Well, there's no better place to be than in Israel for Sukkot. And you'll see sukkahs all over the place. And it's really fun to see the little sukkahs on balconies and huge sukkahs. And if you have ever stayed in one of the fanciest hotels in Jerusalem, the David Citadel Hotel, raise your hand if you've stayed at the David Citadel Hotel. Really nice hotel in Jerusalem. Well, the David Citadel Hotel has the ability to have a wonderful Sukkot. Will somebody read the David Citadel, Sukkot at the David Citadel?
Sukkot at the David Citadel, or whatever, is unquestionably the best of all worlds. The hotel spares no effort to create stunning custom-designed Sukkot decorations decorated with plenty of fresh, fragrant flowers and additional elegant design elements. Don't miss the breathtaking panoramic vista from the rooftop sukkah, the largest sukkah in Jerusalem, with seating for 1,000, or the views from the sukkah from both of the terraces as well as the poolside sukkah. Those who opt for a more intimate Yom Tov experience can order a private sukkah built on their own balcony.
That is service. So, the poolside sukkah. So we've taken some of this idea, some of the commandments, and maybe we have made them a little more luxurious. What some of you don't know is that everyone that has a bar bat mitzvah at Congregation Beth Am will volunteer to build your sukkah for you. So Olivia and Noah are going to be happy to build sukkahs in the future for whoever, whether it's a balcony or a poolside or wherever it is. So a little bit of learning about the sukkah. I hope everybody has a wonderful Sukkot. Please join us at Beth Am for lots of Sukkot celebrations, including for families, for study, for learning, for friendship. And please come by and help us decorate it as well. So, Hag Sameach.
Hag Sameach, thanks. Yasher Koch, Rabbi.
So the sukkah will be built at 9 o'clock on Sunday, and then Sukkot starts Sunday night at sundown. It will be the first day of Sukkot. So. So the question is, can you have somebody make your own sukkah? So actually, they talk a little bit about this. It's encouraged to make your own sukkah. You don't have to have someone make your own sukkah. You are required, halachically, by law, to have your own lulav and etrog. But the communal idea, back to this very verse of the Torah, where all citizens shall live in the booths, it's encouraged to have big sukkahs for other people too. So you just have to be in it, doesn't have to be your own. So.
All right. Yasher Koch.